بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. So today is the text is in Arabic is an-nas, the text versus al-ra'i, opinion. So this is an-nas, which is the text, versus al-ra'i. These are two traditions. Two traditions in extracting the Islamic law. Extracting the Islamic law or legislation. One is the tradition or the school of text. The second is the school of opinion. Now let's go back a little bit to study some background to these traditions. We mentioned earlier that immediately after the death of the Prophet, the first caliph and the second caliph banned the recording of the hadith, the inscription of the hadith. They banned it based on the pretext that, what was the pretext?
People can confuse it with the Quran.
Exactly. That if we encourage this, then people are going to get confused. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum. People are going to get confused between Quran and the hadith. But that was not the real reason. What was the real reason?
He didn't want them to politically document that to be the rightful.
There was a political reason to this. And that political reason was to separate the people from Ahlul Bayt, the family of the Prophet. Because in the tradition and the sayings of the Prophet, there was an emphasis on the role of Ahlul Bayt after him. Hundreds of hadiths narrated by the Prophet that after me are my family. Those are the successors. The Prophet spoke about the virtue of his cousin, Imam Ali alayhi salam, about the virtues of his daughter Fatima. The others, not just Imam Ali and Fatima, Hassan and Hussein, and even the Prophet mentioned the Imams that are going to succeed Imam Ali alayhi salam. By name, he mentioned them by name. They did not want these traditions to spread out and for people to know about them. So they decided that let's shut this door and say no hadith. We don't need the hadith. We have the Quran. And this is what happened during the death of the Prophet. When the Prophet was on deathbed, Umar ibn al-Khattab said, Hasbuna kitabullah, a very famous quotation of Umar, the second caliph. Hasbuna suffices us. Enough for us, the book of God. We don't need what this man is saying, meaning Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So, as a result of that, we had the shortages of hadith. When you shut the door, you say we don't need the hadith. Hadith is a supplement to the Quran. Hadith is very important. When it comes to legislation, we need the hadith. We depend on the hadith to understand Islam, to understand the Sharia, and to understand Islamic law. So when you shut that and you ban it, then you're going to face severe shortages and you're going to have a crisis. Because we know that we have two sources of legislation. Sources of legislation are Quran and Hadith. So if you cancel the Hadith, you are left with the Quran. And the Quran does not give you details we mentioned that ayatul ahkam in the Quran are estimated at 500. We will study, of course, we will study, inshallah, soon some of these verses, ayatul ahkam. We will focus on them, we will take some samples and study them. And we will study them and focus on them in details. So these are only 500. What about the rest? Quran is not enough. We need the hadith. So they faced a shortage here. Instead, when they canceled the hadith and they come across a situation, they don't know the answer. They don't know the answer. The answer has been given previously by the Prophet. But when they shut the hadith, they deprived themselves from these answers. So instead of that, they started doing what?
Opinion.
The opinion. This school, the opinion tradition flourished. And they had to give personal opinion. Personal opinion. Though ijtihad is also an opinion. But what type of opinion is ijtihad?
Based on text.
Exactly. Exactly. Ijtihad, juristic reasoning, write this down. Juristic reasoning. Ijtihad. It's juristic reasoning. Okay? This juristic reasoning is also an opinion, but opinion within what? Within certain boundaries. What are those boundaries?
If it's logical, if it's based on logic.
Based on Quran and Sunnah. Based on Quran and Sunnah. It is an opinion. Juristic reasoning is an opinion of a mujtahid, of a jurist, but not a free opinion outside the boundaries of Sharia. No. Restricted opinion within the Quran and the Sunnah. So what does the mujtahid do? What is his job? His job is to study the Quran and the Sunnah and gets the law out, extract the law from sources, legitimate sources. Whereas this one, the school of opinion, they create the law, they make the law, lawmakers, not without the boundaries of the Sunnah of the Prophet. But it is a personal opinion. Do you understand the difference? Please, if you don't, I'll repeat that. We have legitimate ijtihad and illegitimate ijtihad. The legitimate ijtihad, mujtahid, the jurist, the experts in Islamic law, has tools. These tools are Quran and the hadith of the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt in our tradition, the hadith of the Prophet and his family. So he goes and he studies them and he derives the law from these two sources. And that is legitimate ijtihad. And that is what has been happening since the time of Imam al-Sadiq. In the Shia tradition, in the Imami tradition, in the Ja'fari tradition. Then we have the second type of ijtihad, reasoning, juristic reasoning, which is it could be legitimate and it could be illegitimate. Why? Because the mujtahid, the jurist in this case, in the second case, does not depend on the sources. He would depend on what? His own personal opinion. Give me an example of depending on his personal opinion. What do we call it? We studied this maybe first or second year. No. I'm not saying who does this. I'm saying the process where he or she depend on his personal opinion. Because he shut the resources out. He doesn't have resources. He has lack of resources. So instead, he depends on what? On his personal opinion. but it has a specific name. It has a specific name. And that specific name, one of them is called what? Qiyas. Qiyas, analogy. What does qiyas mean here? Qiyas means that the mujtahid comes across a situation where, because he has lack of resources, he cannot find an answer. There is no hadith. They did not write the hadith down. So in this case, had they been having the hadith, he can find it. He can find the answer in the hadith. But because the hadith was banned, they said, don't deal with the hadith. Mamnu'. There were some Sahaba who were put in jail. 3 of them, they were put in jail during the time of Umar because they were transmitting the hadith of the Prophet. They were put in jail. So now the jurist, he doesn't have the resources. So he comes across situations where he needs to find an answer, okay? He doesn't have the answer. So he resorts to qiyas. Qiyas means that he brings a similar case. He takes the answer of a similar case and he brings it to this new case. Is this acceptable or not? And why? If it is acceptable, tell me why. If it is not acceptable, tell me why.
In some cases, it can be acceptable. Oftentimes, it's not. It's not applicable. There's like maybe ahkam. There's certain things that you have that you can say, okay, because you did this, yes, in a similar situation for this, you can do that. But in many instances, they're not.
Can you give me an example?
So there's like generalization versus specific.
Yes. Give me an example. That we cannot use the similar case because each one has its own case, its own ruling. An example of that,
Prayer and fasting.
prayers and fasting. Which one is more important? Prayers. Prayers are more important. Prayers are more important. Of course, prayers. As-salatu amududdin. The main foundation of religion is the prayers. So prayers are first. Second is fasting. Now, in the case of women who during their period they don't pray, they don't fast. But after that, do they have to pray? No. But do they have to fast? Yes. But why? Prayers is more important than fasting. Why they don't have to pray but they have to fast? This is what God wants you to do. So you cannot use analogy, qiyas here. Another example. Which one is more evil and terrible and heinous? Murder or fornication? Both of them are bad, but which one is the worse? Fornication or murder of an innocent person? Murder. How many witnesses we need to prove the murder? 2. And how many we need to prove the fornication? 4. See? These are the rulings. God says, Tilka hududullah. I present these, So you cannot, make comparison. Sometimes the comparison, qiyas in the normal language means comparison. Okay? Comparison. Sometimes you cannot make comparison. You cannot. You cannot make comparison. But unfortunately, because they did not use the hadith, they had to. They were forced to use this comparison to bring about the law, to create a law, to give an answer. But if they allowed the hadith to flourish, they wouldn't have. Because for every case there is an answer. Almost for every case. And we mentioned earlier, a few weeks ago, that several of our imams were asked, Yabna Rasulullah, Is there answer for everything we experience in life? They said everything, whether huge or small. There is Quranun or Hadith. Either the answer is in the Quran or in the Hadith. So the Sharia, Quran and Sunnah covers everything. But when you cancel 50% of the Sharia, which is the Sunnah of the Prophet, of course you're going to face shortages, and then you have to use your personal opinion. Yes. Yes.
I'm a little confused here. I remember in one of your khutbah, you were talking about the current issues in the world and the inability of the Sharia to find solution for these things. Like, for instance, you mentioned the question of people who change sex, for instance.
Mm.
I don't remember this of what the
Maybe I did not say the inability of the Sharia. No. I said that probably what I said is that the scholar, the jurist, the faqih, the mujtahid, they have to have an open understanding of the situation so they can give the right answer. But if they separate themselves from the ijtima', from the society, from the people, they don't listen to the people's concern, they don't know what is going on, they lock the door, okay? And many of those happens in the Sunni tradition. I was watching a Sunni scholar the other day on television, live on television. The presenter was asking him that you said in one of your sermons that you have to listen to the sultan even if the sultan, the ruler, he's corrupt. Is this right or wrong? He said, yes, right. And then he added, he said, even if you see the sultan fornicating on television, exactly, this is his exact. Doing zina and liwat also. Okay? Even if you see him, you still have to follow him. Why? Because if you don't follow him, there is mafsada, there will be corruption. There will be state of anarchy, lawlessness in the society. So you must submit to the sultan. This was his justification. And this was created by Bani Umayyah. These sort of hadith that ati'hum, obey them, obey the sultan, even if he's corrupt, even if he's someone who does not adhere to religious teachings. These were created by Bani Umayyah. So people would submit to Bani Umayyah, will be subordinate. People will be like a herd of sheep, okay? They don't ask the sultan, why you are doing this? So I was probably referring to this, not the inability of the Sharia. The Sharia can encompass our life. Sharia is very able and it has answer, but it depends on the person. Who is in charge? Sometimes someone in charge who really, either he's working for the government, he does not want to speak the truth, or he's ignorant. But someone who has a freedom to express himself and he goes to the right sources of Sharia, definitely he will have an answer. Definitely he will have an. This is why our fuqaha, we are proud that whenever you ask our fuqaha, they don't tell you, sorry, there is no answer for this. They don't tell you this. There is an answer. In the school of Ahlul Bayt, there is an answer for everything. However, the faqih has to step up and then understand the needs of the society to be able to give the right answer, not the wrong answer. Not the wrong answer. Because if you don't understand the society, the needs of the society, the sensitivities in the society, then the answers are not going to be adequate. The faqih has to have not only the book of fiqh, he has to go outside and listen and see what is needed in that. Enable for him mostly for him, I can't say for her, mostly for him to give the right answer. Not the inability of the Sharia. Sometimes the inability of the faqih, because he's inadequate. He's not doing a good job. Otherwise, Sharia is very competent. So they use comparison to give the answer. This is personal opinion. This follows the tradition of the opinion. Madrasatul Ra'i. This is why we had two madrasa, two schools. After the time of the Prophet, two schools. One of them, Madrasatul Nas, the school of text, led by Imam Ali. They said there is Quran and there is Sunnah, and I can give you the answer from these. The other school who abandoned the Sunnah, and they banned the Sunnah altogether, they had to follow their own personal opinion. What is the second personal opinion? Second example of this is first example of the personal opinion, comparison. What is the second one?
Was it induction or inference? Induction?
It could be. This one, in fact, it's same as qiyas, yeah. But the second one is istihsan. Istihsan, it means that it sounds good. Istihsan, it sounds good. Meaning that the faqih changes the law, either creates law or abrogates the law based on his personal flavor, personal taste. He does istihsan. He sees something, wow, this is good. Why don't we bring it to our religion? Or he sees something, it could be difficult for the people, so let's cancel it. What are the examples of istihsan that did take place, especially during the time of the second caliph and the third caliph? Taraweeh is one of them. Taraweeh, the prayers of Taraweeh, we have nawafil during the month of Ramadan. During the month of Ramadan.
What's the meaning of Taraweeh?
Taraweeh, I'm explaining now. Every night in Ramadan, there are certain prayers, nawafil, nafila, that are done, but it has to be done privately, not in jama'ah, individually, either in the mosque individually or at home. The caliph came, the second caliph came to his mosque in Medina, to the mosque of the Prophet, and he found people, one of them is doing ruku', the other is doing sujood, the other one is standing, the third one is sitting. He said, I don't like this. This is a mess. I like to see people being organized. So he said, from tomorrow I'm going to bring qari', reciter of the Quran. I'm appointing a qari', someone to recite, and you guys, all of you, follow him in the prayers. Don't do individual. It has to be jama'ah. Though the Prophet before him, the Sunnis write this in their books, the Prophet before him, he did these prayers, the nawafil, individually, not in jama'ah. In fact, they say the Prophet, when he stood in the mosque to do, people lined up behind him. You know, people love to be behind the Prophet. The Prophet said, no, not these prayers. The mandatory prayers, yes. The 5 daily prayers, we do in congregation. But this one is individual. But they didn't listen to him. They didn't listen to the Prophet. So the Prophet left the masjid, he went into his house. He started doing these prayers inside the house. Why? Because Islam, God wants to encourage us that sometimes your prayers has to be private between you and God, not in public. Jama'ah is in public. Jama'ah is done in public because it has many meanings. It has political meaning, social meaning. We stand together, we work together, we help each other, so we do jama'ah. But sometimes the prayers, especially nawafil, the night nawafil, it has to be private. You want to take your time, speak to God. Sometimes your sujood is long, sometimes your ruku' is long, sometimes so it's better to have your own privacy. This is the reason behind it. And the Prophet has hadith which is narrated by both the traditions, Sunnis and Shias, that I love to do, the hadith says, I love to do my prayers at home except the fariḍah. The fariḍah, the 5 daily prayers, I do them in the mosque. The other prayers I love to do them at home in private. But the second caliph came and he made what was a private, he made it public. And they call this Taraweeh, the prayers. Today they do it in most of the mosques. In Ramadan, in the evening, it takes sometimes an hour to perform Taraweeh. And today Taraweeh is one of the most important landmarks of Islam. If you don't do Taraweeh, you have not done Ramadan.
Yeah.
Okay, this is one. What is the other alteration that took place? Based on istihsan, based on, this is good. We have to change the law because this is better. Istihsan of the second caliph.
Abolishing?
Yes. In Islam, again, there is permanent marriage and temporary marriage. Each one has pros and cons. Some people cannot afford permanent marriage. They can't. For financial reasons, for medical reasons, for social reasons, for whatever reasons, they can't. Islam says rather than doing it in the haram way, you can have people, they agree upon this type of marriage, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and it has conditions, of course. It has conditions. It's not something completely free. But Umar ibn al-Khattab didn't like it, so he abolished this. This is a second example of istihsan. He said people are messing up. This is exactly his pretext. He said people are taking advantage of this, abusing it, so I have to abrogate this and cancel it and ban it. People take advantage of the permanent marriage too, not just temporary. I just said to Hamid, just before the class, a lady called me. They did their nikah in May, back in May, and she said after my husband deceived me. After 2 months, he filed for divorce and he left me alone, and I came from overseas. I have no money now. No one is to take care of me. So he abused the permanent marriage. If anything can be abused, permanent marriage, temporary marriage, divorce, family, fasting, Hajj can be abused, zakat can be abused. Everything can be abused. It doesn't mean that you have to cancel it. Now Salatul Jum'ah in some countries is very dangerous. Salatul Jum'ah, Friday prayers, this sacred ritual becomes very corrupt. You know why? Because the sultan, because the speaker, he does dua only for the sultan, for the government. And everything that he says, not everything, most of the thing that he says is politicized, just to support the government, support the sultan, support the political establishment. This type of Friday prayers has no value. It's corrupt. Why? Because it deceives the people, the naive people. This is exactly what Muawiyah did. How did Muawiyah manage to get the control of the people? Through Friday prayers. Through the Friday prayers panel. Not through dancing or drinking. People are naive. So does that mean we have to cancel Friday prayers? No more? No. You have to reform it. You have to fix it. You don't have to cancel. You have to educate people. What is the third example? We have many examples.
Hands.
Huh?
Hands.
Hands, exactly. Istihsan, exactly, Najat. Istihsan. He said, this looks good, sounds good. They came, they stood before him. He said, this is beautiful, Why they are doing this? He said, because you are a great man, and once they stand before a great man, this is beautiful gesture. Even us, sometimes I realize myself, if I am going to a cemetery or somewhere, I do this. But that doesn't mean that you have to do it in the prayers. You have to bring it and do it in them. Because God knows the best. If this was good in the prayers, God will tell the Prophet, Ya Rasulullah, do this rather than that. This is istihsan, personal opinion.
That was under Umar also? During Umar's time also?
Umar's time. What else which was changed because of istihsan, because of personal opinion? Hayya ala khair al-amal. Because they said that was during the time of the third caliph. They removed حي على خير العمل from the adhan because the third caliph said if we say خير العمل is the prayers, people are not going to go for jihad. People say let's do prayers because prayers is خير العمل, salat is خير العمل. So they are not going to leave for jihad. So they removed this sentence from the adhan. Okay? What else? Salatul Eid. The lecture did exist.
Yes, but the order is different.
The order is different. Yes, exactly. But what is really it had very bad consequences, the 3 divorces at once, which today some Sunni countries banned this. Can you imagine? The judiciary in many Sunni countries, they said, we cannot accept this anymore. One of these countries, it's not a Muslim country, but India. India banned, the Superior Court in India, they banned the 3 divorces in one session. Because it wasn't in one session. God says, الطلاق مرتان فإمساك بمعروف أو تسريح بإحسان فإن طلقها. It has to be 3 different sessions. And between each session and the second, there is a period of time. But Umar came during the second caliph. He said, talaq now is becoming rampant, widespread. So let's make it easy for people. Why do we give them these intervals, Today 1 talaq, and then after second try, then they do the second talaq, and then the third. Let's do it once, and they go, each one goes his own way. Make it easy for them to expedite. He wanted to expedite this process, the process of separation. So he allowed 3 divorces in one session. So a man comes home and tells his wife, you are divorced, divorced, divorced. طالق, طالق, طالق. Sometimes he can even shorten the sentence. You don't have to spend lots of energy. Say, you are. You can say, you are divorced 3 times. خلاص. Make it very, very, very short, concise. خلاص. Now she cannot go back to him. If he wakes up in the morning and he has regret, why did I do this? It's not good. We have children, we have family. She cannot go back to him. This is a problem. This is destroying societies and families and children. This is dangerous. Allah made the talaq in 3 steps, so in case they regret the first time, they have a chance to go back to each other, to restore the family. So he said, no, you can do it in 3 at one strike, in one session. And it becomes finalized. And then if they regret and they want to go back to each other, what is the solution? Muhallil. She has to go and find someone and marry someone else. Who would accept this to happen? Which man would accept that his wife goes to someone else and she marries him, and then they consummate the marriage, not just marriage on paper, real marriage, and then if he wants to divorce her without a pressure, then she can come back to him. Nobody would accept that. This is humiliation. So this one also based on istihsan of the second caliph. These things happened, flourished at the expense of the text. There is text, but the text is abandoned, unfortunately. Abandoned. And we have something called al-ijtihad fi muqabil al-nas. Al-ijtihad, I'll translate this to you. Fi muqabil al-nas. Meaning that the verdict against the text. What does that mean? A verdict against the text. Write it down. A verdict against the text. Ijtihad fi muqabil al-nas. What does that mean?
Could it mean that regardless of what the
Yeah,
text is stating?
there is a text. The text says don't do it, but this jurist comes and he does it against the text. Because he says, this is my personal opinion. The maslaha now, the interest of the ummah, the society, the community, is to do this and to abandon that. This is very dangerous. This means that we don't have religion. Anyone can create religion. Then God is not a lawmaker. And God says several times in the Quran, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْكَافِرُونَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. There is a law. I sent you a law. You have to abide. You can't go with your own opinion. You cannot change the law based on your own opinion. Yes.
Sorry, a verdict against the text, what is that again? Is that
Ijtihad verdict means
that the
a jurist comes and he knows that this specific action is forbidden,
right?
but he makes it halal. So he goes against the text.
So this is a formal term when that happens? Or-
Yeah. This is the formal term is al-ijtihad fi muqabil al-nas, against the text. Ijtihad is usually is what? Ijtihad is within. It has to be within, not against. The ijtihad, the process of ijtihad, juristic reasoning, is within the text. Didn't we say this earlier? Huh? The mujtahid does his ijtihad, the reasoning, within the text. That is the legal one. But this one, the illegal one, is when he knows there is a text. Not that the text is missing. The text is there. And he sees the text. But he says the text is obsolete, old. Doesn't work for my community, for my society. Doesn't work for this time. So he will cancel it and then he will bring up his own opinion. This is what we mean by a verdict against the text. Yes.
Isn't it about divorce, isn't it mentioned in Quran?
Yes. Yeah.
So wouldn't that be an example?
Yeah, exactly. Of this. Yeah. Yeah, the divorce that was made with 3 strikes at one session. That is an example, very obvious example that the Quran says don't do this, but they goes against that. So this is an example of that. Okay. Yes, please. Yes.
You mentioned that Umar has done this,
Mm.
like for instance the three
3 divorces in one session. Yes.
But does that mean that none of the Shia mujtahids advocate this?
No, they don't recognize this. Not only the Shias don't recognize, some Sunni countries, some Sunni jurists, they don't recognize this. They say we don't follow this. Some countries, I was told by a Sunni scholar that in some Sunni countries, the judiciary, they don't accept. If the husband and the wife go to the court and the judge finds out that the husband divorced his wife 3 times in one session, he would tell them that this is considered only one divorce. I don't consider it to be 3. So you can go back to him if you want. So they don't accept what Umar did. It's very detrimental. It destroys society. Imagine people, husband and wives, they quarrel every day. They quarrel, they misunderstand each other. They have miscommunication. So if he comes home angry and then he tells her, you are divorced, okay? And then the other one. In the Shia tradition, the divorce requires, according to the Quran, requires what? Witnesses. Witnesses have to be present. Adil witnesses. Okay? They have to be present. But in the other traditions, a husband and wife privately, they argue in the middle of the night and he tells her you are divorced and there are no witnesses whatsoever. And that the divorce is valid.
So say even if it's an emotional decision, let's say even the first one, it's an emotional, the person gets mad.
Yeah.
That counts, or no, can that not count maybe?
If it is emotional but in front of witnesses, of course the divorce, most of it are emotional.
Yeah.
But you have to have witnesses listening to this. And just witnesses, shahid adil, not just any witness. A witness who's a drunk, a witness who does not pray, a witness who's not religious, his testimony is not counted. There have to be two witnesses. Islam makes it difficult. So you can bring two witnesses, adil, just, religious, committed, they don't do ma'siyah, they don't commit sins, and you say it in front of them. It takes a long time.
Yeah. But by that time the emotion is gone. I mean, they're
Exactly,
stable.
exactly.
That's that.
That is the point.
Yeah.
So you are not angry anymore because it takes you 2-3 days to do the divorce, then you forget about it and you go back to each other. Make it difficult. Otherwise, if there are no witnesses, it's easy. He becomes emotional. Most of the divorces out of anger, All of a sudden he yells, طالق طالق طالق. And it creates problem. Oh.
Is there a waiting?
Mhm. Yes, yeah, yes.
Thank you very much for this enlightenment, because all during the years that I lived in Iran, the question of muhallil was something that I was told that it is something in Sharia and all the ulama of Islam.
It has. No, muhallil we have, but muhallil has to be after 3 legitimate divorces. 3 legitimate divorces. So it happens. But after 3 legitimate divorces, so the divorce happens, okay, in front of witnesses, then they decide to go back to each other. Okay, they go back to each other. Then they divorce each other again in front of witnesses. Then they go back to each other. Then the 3rd time, if they divorce each other in front of witnesses, then after that they need muhallil. But this happens very rarely. To find every time, to find adil, a witness who is adil, and then you say this. It happens. Not that it doesn't, but very rarely. In the old times. Yeah. But when you make it without witnesses and in one session, this is very dangerous. It happens more frequently. More
So
frequently.
the word muhallil is the person that marries?
Yes.
The person, so
Yes.
some people did this for a job maybe, or?
Some people did. There is a documentary, check it out on BBC, on YouTube.
Okay.
In England,
Yeah.
they found a ring with long beards, those especially from the Indian subcontinent, India and Pakistan, because they do this, the 3 divorces in one session. So they contact them and they ask for £5,000. Imagine she's divorcee. They tell her, come, pay £5,000, which is $7,000. So this man, we find you a man, and you have to pay for the hotel. You have to pay for the meal. You have to pay for all the expenses. So he comes and he marries you. He sleeps with you, and then the following morning he divorces you, and you can go back to your husband. There is a documentary. Check it out on BBC. I saw that documentary. Secretly, they filmed them. So the interviewer, she makes herself a divorcee, and she comes to that man and she tells him, my husband divorced me 3 times and I love him and we regret that. I want to. He says, yeah, okay. You pay 5,000, but you have to bring them cash, no credit card. Okay, I'll find you someone, and he says all the details on television. They showed that on television. So it happens, of course. It happens.
So in those 3 divorces in one session, do they still go through the waiting period to become effective or not?
No, as immediately after the 3rd divorce, if he says it 3 times, then there is
So not even a waiting.
there is a waiting period for her to remarry, but the divorce is finalized. He cannot go back to her. She cannot go back to him. Whereas in the 1st or the 2nd one, she can go back to him. But once he say it the 3rd time, that's it. But she has to go through waiting period in order for her to remarry
For
some.
divorce to become effective, I guess both couples have to go through the waiting period, like 4
No,
months.
not 4 months.
3 months.
3 periods.
3 periods.
4 months and 10 days for someone whose her husband has died. Iddatul wafat, the waiting period of death. She cannot remarry until after 4 months and 10 days. But the divorce, which happens because of the divorce, 3 periods. She cannot remarry until 3 periods. The first period is over, the second period, as soon as she sees the 3rd period, it's finalized. It's finalized. She can go and remarry. So it could be less than 3 months, depending on the.
And before that, she can go back to her husband.
Before that, she can go back to her
My
husband.
question is, does this apply to the third divorces in
No,
one session as
no,
well?
no. The 3rd divorce, once the 3rd divorce happens, then there is no
No return.
return. Even within the period, there is no waiting period. There is no return. It becomes, finalized. وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد.